I even did this SEO audit with an expert, and he was just like, you have a lot of like junk articles on your website. Like nobody has read this article or even looked at this recipe in years. And he, gave me great advice, like get rid of it, take it off your site, because, if Google is looking at your site and they see 100 articles that and only 10 of them are really being read, Google's going to think, you're a 10 out of 100. But if you have 10 articles and all 10 of them are getting read, Google's going to think you're, this 100% rock star.
Jenny, it's so great to have you on the show. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. My
pleasure. So you've got this pretty cool story. You kind of made your mess your mission, with the business. And, those of us who are in this space, in the personal brand space, for a while, we understand like this is a really good thing to do. But when we're starting out, I don't know how you were. We don't really know if that's like the way to go. So how can you share a little bit of the backstory behind how you built your brand?
Yeah, well, and I love that because it definitely was my mess. I actually had been doing PR and marketing for many years and going about my business. And then I got sick. I wasn't feeling well. And I learned that I had celiac disease, which most people know as a disease that you can't eat gluten, right? And all of a sudden your life is turned upside down when you're told you can't eat this entire food group that you've loved dearly your whole life, living on pizza most of my life. It was really shocking and all consuming to me. And even after losing gluten, I still didn't feel well. I still had health troubles. And so I decided I needed to figure this out, started to read more, enrolled in the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, and started to learn about nutrition and how to heal my body, and just changed everything. Like I no longer wanted to do what I was doing in the past. I wanted to really focus in on healing myself and helping others. I felt like I had all this important information to share and important things to say, and I wanted to get it out in the world. And so here I was in my mid-30s at that time and ready to just throw away this career that I had built and move into this new world of gluten-free living. And like you were saying, and many podcasts in the past, there's riches and niches. And I just felt like there was this underserved niche on how to be healthy and gluten-free. And that's where I wanted to go.
So you went through both a personal and professional kind of pivot at the same, like these are happening at the same time. So
same time.
You're learning this stuff about your health and how to take care of yourself. What about the professional side? Were you like, yeah, I'm going to go make money doing this? Did you know it was possible? Were you like, I'm going to become this big blogger or something like that? Was that kind of your intent early on?
Maybe a little in a sense that I came from a marketing background. And so in the marketing world, I had been working with bloggers and influencers, and a lot of them were doing so well. And I knew that I could do that too. And as much as I wanted to leave my, everyday career in a PR agency, I felt like, you can take the girl out of marketing, but you can't take the marketing out of the girl, right? Like I still had those skills and I still loved marketing, but now I was ready to do it for myself and grow my own business and my own personal brand and my own platform. And so I did want to be successful at this. I, knew I was leaving behind a job and money and security to kind of go off into this new venture and start this new business. But I wanted to be successful at it. And so, I obviously put a lot of things in place to help me be successful. And something I've mentioned to you before is I started a bloggers group here in Denver because I just wanted to learn what other bloggers were doing. I wanted to see how they were being successful. And I always joke, like maybe I could, rub their heads and some of it would rub off on me and I could figure out what it took to be a successful blogger, not only for creating a business for myself, but like I said, I felt like I had important things to say that hadn't been said in this world. And I wanted people to hear it.
So I love that you're talking about blogging, because blogging has, at least in the circles of marketing that I'm in, has kind of fallen out of favor, right? Because people don't talk about it as much, right? And they don't blog as much. Everyone does a podcast, right? Everyone does,
Right.
some YouTube channel, whatever it is. And I'm like, I built my whole business on blogging.
Right.
I didn't have a ton of traffic or anything like that, but that's where I learned how to hone my ideas. So, would you still consider yourself primarily a blogger? Is that what you would say?
Right. It's complicated. It's sort of like there might be a little bit of a taboo about like a blogger or an influencer. And I do think
Mm-hmm.
there are some people who have kind of ruined it for us. There's these bloggers out there who are just doing it to be Instagram famous.
Mm-hmm.
And it does drive me a little bit crazy, like I'm not on Instagram showing off my latest spray tan, which I'm not, but I'm there to share important information and help my community survive and thrive on this gluten-free diet that we all have to have as a medically necessary diet. So yes, I do consider myself a blogger. I put a lot of effort into my blog and creating content that is important to my community. And I'm really proud that I can make a living doing that. At the same time, I also consider myself a brand or a business. And I've been looking for ways to grow even beyond the content creation side of blogging. So as much as I'm creating blog posts or Instagram posts to, feed my community in a sense, I'm also looking at creating products. Even this week, I just launched a whole meal planning service, like
Oh, cool.
when you are gluten-free, you don't even know what to make for dinner, or you don't know what to eat half the time. I used to just like eat a scrambled egg and an apple because I was like, I don't know what to eat. Everything just looks so scary to you when you
Mm-hmm.
have to look
Mm-hmm.
at food through a new lens. And so, I think as you grow as a blogger and you recognize that you're actually building a brand, that's when you can start looking into other revenue streams and other opportunities that complement what you're doing.
I love that. So, when you talk about building a blog, I know that you really stand for like raising the bar of professionalism. Yes, thank you. Please, for goodness sake,
Yes.
please. I'm like you. Coming from a marketing background, both of us were probably like two peas in a pod, right? Because there's like a lot of things that content is great, but you got to frame it. Like it's got to
Right.
look good. It's got to read well. All that sort of things. All those sort of things. So I know like you are known in the marketing world for like organic traffic, and you do it like the right way, which I love, right?
Right.
So when you talk about building a blog and a brand, can you share some of your like some of what you've learned on how to build this tribe and what you did intentionally to just kind of grow and make sure this blog was, as much as you knew how to be successful? Can you share some of that with
Right.
us? I want to
Oh
know.
man.
Okay, all right, fire away. As you said, oh man, I get the
Well, I
notebook
was gonna say,
out. All right, here we go. Okay.
I was going to say, if I could do it all over again, I would have done it right from the start.
Okay.
Obviously, I fumbled through it a lot and
Mhm.
I've learned a lot along the way. But I think that a lot of bloggers start a blog as a hobby and then
Mhm.
they realize, well, maybe I do want to be successful at it. And you can't just journal about your life. That is not going to necessarily get you traffic. There's very few bloggers that make it just, journaling about the mundane life.
Mhm.
That's more of keeping an online journal for your friends and family to see who maybe don't live nearby. But when you are blogging for business, it's really about creating a plan of attack for what kind of content you want to create, who you're creating this content for, and not feeling, not getting on that hamster wheel where you have to create content every day and constantly that no one is reading. I even did this SEO audit with an expert, and he was just like, you have a lot of like junk articles on your website. Like nobody has read this article or even looked at this recipe in years. And he, gave me great advice, like get rid of it, take it off your site, because,
Mhm.
if Google is looking at your site and they see 100 articles that and only 10 of them are really being read, Google's going to think, you're a 10 out of 100. But if you have 10 articles and all 10 of them are getting read, Google's going to think you're, this 100% rock star. And
Mhm.
so really, wishing I had done that from the start, that the content I created would all be great content. And right now, like I go through the weeds and get rid of old content, fix up new content. And even talking to some of the other bloggers who are really successful, they talk about seeing their blog as a project, like here are 100 articles that I have researched with SEO or with my community that I want to create. And once I create those articles, my blog is done. And now I just go back and update it and keep it as this great resource for others to utilize and see over the years. But I don't feel like I have to create new content every single day.
Oh, I like that. Okay. So yeah, all right. Guilty. I have probably a ton of junk articles on my site. I also publish show notes for my podcast all over my site. So there's, way too many, posts on my site. But I love what you're talking about, like treating the blog as a business, because I've only really, I think I've treated it that way, but probably not as well as I could. And recently invested in a copywriter to take some really good podcast episodes that did well and transcribe those and then clean them up for my blog. And so we're all experimenting this. I'll have to tell you about it in a few weeks,
Right.
let you know how it goes.
I'd love to know.
Right. But it's great because I don't feel like I have to do this work. I'm in the middle of writing a book. I know you've got a book coming out soon, so we're going to talk about that in moments, if you don't mind. And
of course.
yeah, so all of that. Where do you see some things that people who do publish content pretty well, what can they do to optimize like reach, or do they collaborate more? Like there are two types of people. Sorry, this is a long-winded question. Let me rephrase and simplify. I mean, two kinds of people who struggle to create content, and then people who create content but don't know what to do with it. And it's good content, right? So I feel like my content's pretty decent. What would you say to someone like me? Hey, you have no problem publishing. You can create good content. You've got a small tribe or whatnot. What would you say those people need to do?
Right.
Do they need to collaborate? What would you say there?
I think in the content creation world that there might be an expression that you should spend 30% of your time creating content and 70% of the time marketing that content, because you create this great article and you spend all day creating it, or all week or month or whatever, and no one's reading it, right? Because no one knows about it. So when you spend a lot of time creating that content, if you're working with a copy editor to make it even, more beautiful and more readable, then you want to actually spend the time to market that piece of content. And that's where I think a lot of bloggers get kind of, in a pitfall, I guess, for a lot of bloggers, is that, they know how to create great content, but they just don't know what to do with it. And it's like, you just can't necessarily, here, put it on my Facebook and my Instagram and think that you're going to get traffic. I mean, you get no traffic from Instagram. First of all, that's not the proper use for Instagram. But like, how do you get that content read? And this is really the principle of, I believe, building a community and building, a community of people who want to consume the content that you're creating and the products that you're creating. And, you just can't create something and poof, be an overnight success. You really have to do it with a lot of intention. And so, that's why I was saying, if I could go back and do it over again, I would have done so much differently. But over the years, I've sort of figured out, like, I need this community. I need to build this community. I need to have a connection with my community. I need to be in touch with my community, and really understand what their struggles are and what their challenges are, and then create the content that meets those challenges so that, they're reading it. And I'll give you a great example is, I have this gluten-free diet support group on Facebook. It's not as active as I would like to be. I'm definitely looking at how to grow that support group. But I posed a question, or actually I saw people in the group talking about, what do you do when you get accidentally gluten? Like when you accidentally eat a piece of gluten and you feel sick, what do you guys do? And people were talking about that, like huge threads on my gluten-free diet support group. So I took that thread and I created an article, 7 ways to overcome an accidental gluten episode, right? Like, you accidentally ate gluten, what do you do? And so I took those tips from the community and then plopped the article back into the community. And it's still a well-read article because it was created based on what people were talking about in the community.
Mm. So you create this, I love that. And it probably prevents you from answering the same questions over and over again.
Right.
Hallelujah, right?
Yeah.
So once you publish that article, I'm sure you shared it with your community, shared it
Mhm.
with your list. You probably put it out on social media. Did you kind of take a next step there? Because I know you talk a lot about networking with other bloggers. Was there like, what does that look like? Like
Right.
now once you start promoting within your tribe, what have you done or what can we do with our content to maybe get it outside there?
Right. Well, usually you're creating the content for within your tribe and you're hoping it spreads word of mouth and that people are sharing it. So, giving them opportunities to share it within communities, within Pinterest. Pinterest is a major source of traffic for any niche, I
Oh,
will say.
really?
If
Okay.
you're even what you're doing, like you go search branding information on Pinterest, you will find so much great information out there. It's a great place to market your lead magnets and things like that as well, because growing your community starts with having a really great email list as well,
Mm-hmm.
and the right people on your email list. But then I think that one of the pieces of advice that you hear when you're a blogger is that you need to collaborate and you need to meet other bloggers and network with other bloggers, even if they're doing the same thing as you, or not, even if they're not doing the same thing as
Mm-hmm.
you. So that is the principle of why I started the Denver Bloggers Club, is really about bringing bloggers together to support one another, like to not hold everything I know close to my chest and not share it with someone, but really to share and collaborate and help one another. And so I think, like, even within the blogging community, I'm known as, oh, if you have a gluten issue, you got to talk to Jenny, right? Like, people know me as that gluten-free person in the community. And I know so many other bloggers, like, oh, you cover, you're interested in traveling, you got to meet my friend so-and-so who covers traveling. Even though it has nothing to do with my niche, I'm, getting to know these other bloggers and supporting them as best I can and sharing content and all sorts of stuff.
So in that scenario, is it like, I might be a travel blogger, but somebody asked me about, gluten. They had just happened to ask me about it for one reason or another. And then I refer them to your content. That's just kind of how it's worked. It's just kind of.
It might be, yeah. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if it would be in the blogger context, but like if you
Mm-hmm.
were just out to dinner with some friends and all of a sudden,
Yes.
you're one of them orders a gluten-free meal, you might be like, well, I just interviewed this girl, Jenny from Good For You Gluten Free on my podcast. And, she's a, integrative nutrition coach. You should talk to her. You should look at her blog. And I think that's really how that community spreads, like to really be known for your niche. Because then when people think of that niche, they think of you or they recommend you.
Mm.
Bloggers, though, on the other hand, like supporting another blogger is sort of another story, is really about sharing content. And so I do look for bloggers who do cover the gluten-free diet. We all put our own spin on things, and we're all doing great things. Like, they're doing similar and important work just like me. And so it's really about collaborating and helping one another, even though they might be your competition, quote unquote. And so I often look for ways to share their content, or I'm always like on Instagram, just commenting on what they're doing. And I notice they come back and they comment and they help me. And so there's really this unwritten rule that, the bloggers I think are the most successful are the ones that are really collaborating with other bloggers within their niche, and even without, outside of their niche. But, I think we have to sometimes put that competition outside and be like, no, like, we are not competitors. We are here to collaborate and support one another. And I think that's been a real, secret to my success, is just that willingness to work and collaborate with other bloggers in my community.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you mentioned twice now Instagram. So I'm really curious about this. Okay, so you mentioned Instagram is not how you get traffic.
Right.
And I agree. I mean, they hate links, right? They
Right.
still don't do them, right?
Right.
How do you use Instagram? And well, let's just start there. How do you use Instagram
Right.
in your brand? Because I've been
Instagram
following you
is
now
about,
Mhm.
right. It's about building a community.
Okay.
It's really about building a community and people who love and support you. And I would say the reason to have an Instagram page isn't necessarily to get traffic to your site. And traffic is a way that I monetize my blog. So the more traffic I get, the more money I make on my blog. But Instagram is different. Like, you can't use it to get traffic. And so really the reason I do it is because it really keeps me connected to my community. And also, I like to work with a handful of brands within the gluten-free community as well. And that a lot of the brands just want content created on Instagram. And so it helps me with my brand sponsorship. So it helps me actually monetize this community. So I have a community that I love, that I'm connected with, I'm creating content for. And every so often I can, pop in here with a message from one of the brands that I do work with. So Instagram has become important to me in both of those senses of building a community and sharing information, and connecting on a different level with the people in my community, as well as having an opportunity for sponsors to work with me and help me get paid to build this community. Instagram, though, is not for traffic necessarily. You get that one little link, you get the one little link. You got to use it wisely. I always say use that link for a lead magnet, get people further ingrained into your community, offer them something great. I think the lead that I have on my Instagram page right now is, it's a cheat sheet of 100 names that gluten goes by. So it's not just gluten and it's not just wheat, but it has a lot of different names. And so if you click on that link, it'll take you right to, my ConvertKit page to download that cheat sheet. And then you're in my, my funnel, in a sense, in my email funnel, and you're part of my community. I invite you to join me in other places and just grow with me. I also found, I will say on Instagram, that even if you get the swipe up, you get the swipe up feature if you have 10,000 fans. The swipe up is so overrated. Like, nobody
Really?
swipes up. People on Instagram want to stay on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
So it's super overrated. And there was a lot of pressure for bloggers and Instagrammers to get to 10,000 so they can get this coveted swipe up that nobody swipes up on. They're swiping, horizontally. They're not swiping. So I will say, though, something that I have been working on now is, instead of telling people to go to my story and swipe up on this article if they want to read it, or this recipe, if you want my cupcake recipe, they're not going to go do it. They're not going to go find that recipe. But what I'll say is, if you want the recipe, just leave me a comment and I'll DM it to you. And it has worked so beautifully for getting traffic. So something you can even do too is, I have this great, lead magnet. Like, I know you have the headline, 50 great headlines for your newsletter or something like that. And if you put that in your, do a post about that on Instagram and say, hey, if you want this freebie, just leave me a comment and I'll DM you. And then all of a sudden people are like, yeah, I want it. And now you're showing up in their DMs and you're connecting with them in a different level. And the Instagram algorithm is going to show your content to that person because they think you're friends. You're talking and you're building a relationship.
Oh, I love that. I'm really like, I've probably, in all the years I've been in business, have spent less than $10,000 in ads for like over 10 years.
Right.
And so it's like,
either.
Yeah, I don't spend a lot of, I've always done it organically.
Right.
And I like that approach. I'm a long game type of person when it comes to that. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I will try that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, I will try that and let you know. I want to take a few minutes to talk about your book. So, and let everybody know. Now, first of all, nutrition is something that I've kind of been a lot more intentional about in the last 9 months. It's really changed my life. So that's really cool. A, but B, I want to know how you wrote the book, because I'm writing this book. It feels like the never ending project from hell.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm just like, but share a little bit about the book. Tell us what it's about. And, I want to pick your brain on, how you wrote it. So fire away.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well,
okay.
Again, if I could do it all over again, I would have approached it differently. So, but I think that's the brilliance of being an entrepreneur, and, you're just kind of figuring it out and hustling through everything. But I've had this idea for a book for a long time, and there's a lot of other books about gluten-free living out there. but I feel like I have important things to say, and I had a new spin on the way I wanted to say it. And so I think in most gluten-free books that you read, it's really about like how to be gluten-free and just like how to avoid gluten. But I really learned the hard way that it wasn't just about gluten. There was really a healing process. And I always talk about like gluten being like stabbed in the gut with a knife. Like if someone stabs your gut with a knife and you just take the knife out, are you healed? Oh my gosh, you are not healed. You are far from healed. You probably will die if you don't nurture that wound. And that's what taking gluten out. It was like taking the knife out, but there was so much damage left behind that I really needed to work on healing my body. And so this is what this book is about. I haven't even announced it to my community, but it is coming out this fall. And it's called Dear Gluten, It's Not Me, It's You. And it's all about breaking up with gluten and why it's no good for you and why you should, change your relationship status with gluten. And especially if you have celiac disease or gluten sensitivity or even some sort of autoimmunity, gluten really is a troublemaker in your system. Not everyone, but for a lot of people. And so I think this book will be a really good roadmap to them not only going gluten-free, but also healing their body and healing their mind. Like I have a whole chapter dedicated to the emotional burden of this diet. And oh man, I could cry. Like there's so many feels that you feel. And it's not just about, missing your favorite food, but sometimes you feel like this social pariah, like you want to just travel, but there's no food for you. It's a very complicated process. And so I sort of unpack it all in this book. I don't have an exact date, but it's coming out in the fall. And in terms of writing it, you just got to do it. And I felt like putting it in chapters and really knowing my outline. Once I had that outline down pat, it was easy to really like pour my soul into each of that. Like I knew this chapter is dedicated to eating out. I knew this chapter was dedicated to, resting my digestive system or whatever it is. So I could really go and then enter that information. Just, it really does pour out of you. I think getting started in organizing the book is the hardest part. So if you can even find someone to help you organize it, like tell all the things you want this book to be about and have someone kind of put it into chapters for you, then you can go in and really, really get it done.
Yeah, what I did was I have so much content over the years, webinars, courses, but I was like, okay, let's just transcribe this, clean it up, let me edit it, et cetera, et cetera. So this is what happens, right? And this is for all of you listening, watching. You're like, okay, I was writing the book in a program called Scrivener, which is only on my laptop.
Okay.
And I bought the stupid Scrivener app. Nobody buys Scrivener. I will talk bad about Scrivener for the rest of my life. They charge $20 for this app, and it does not sync. It doesn't sync the changes. It's so pointless. Do not waste your money. Scrivener, if you hear me, I'm calling you out. Okay, fix your dumb app, right? So now, because I'm on my phone way more than my laptop. So I'm like, okay, I'm not working on this. I have all sorts of resistance, Stephen Pressfield, War of Art, right? All sorts of resistance towards like sitting down at my laptop and doing this. And I finally did do what you did, what you just said. Took a chapter, threw it in Google Docs.
Right.
I'm like I'm editing the whole book on my phone while I'm in an Uber, while I'm at a restaurant, while I'm on the plane, when I'm just at the house, not wanting to sit at my laptop. It's hilarious. We are the worst. I'm like content creation ADD. I have no focus anymore. I used to be so focused, and now, being on Instagram and all this Insta stuff has killed my attention span. So
you have to choose. You have to pick.
You have to choose. Yeah, you got to can't fight it. Just got to hack your way through it. So thank you for sharing those tips. That is so cool. With gluten, I have a couple of friends who have gluten issues, and I don't know what you even call it. They're gluten. They can't eat gluten. I don't know what the proper term is. And I don't think I'm in that boat, but a couple of years ago, I went on a slow carb diet for a couple months, and I just cut out anything that was white other than cauliflower and egg whites for 6 days a week. And I read about this, diet somewhere, and I was going through a pretty tough time personally. So I was like, okay, let me at least try to feel good about my body and physically, because, I was going through an emotionally hard time. and cut out sugar, cut out dairy, cut out
Wow.
rice, cut out bread, anything white. There goes pasta. I love Italian food.
Right.
I'm Korean. There goes the rice. Oh my God. Right.
Rice is gluten-free.
Oh, but it's carbs. So
It's
I
carbs,
didn't know
right.
that. So I was like, okay. And I lost like probably 15 pounds in three weeks. I don't even know if
Wow.
that's healthy. I didn't even try. I just cut out that stuff. And it was the first time I really realized the power of controlling your diet.
Right.
And I'd work out just a little bit. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's 70-80% diet and 20% working out.
It is.
And it's like, you can't outwork a bad diet.
Right.
It's just,
And you
so,
probably lost the weight, because you weren't eating some of the more junk food like sugar and stuff. Sugar's gluten-free too, right? So,
Yeah,
but the other thing is a lot of people lose what I call inflammation weight.
Yes.
Their bodies are swollen or retaining water because they're inflamed in certain ways and they don't even understand it. And so that's why I think, just what you were doing, like experimenting with yourself, like that's what we have to do. We don't need a doctor to tell us that we can't eat certain things. Like we almost intuitively know. And if we take a moment to experiment and become our own little detectives and figure out what foods are bothering us, you might find yourself to be a whole new person at the end of it, and
yeah. Till this day, no more cream and sugar in the coffee. I don't drink soda. It's been 4 years since I've done that diet. And then I went back to eating like normal. But I'm very conscious of cutting out carbs in my diet.
Right,
I don't eat them a lot anymore.
Right.
So all I drink is water, black coffee, and alcohol. Now that could go too, but whatever. I'm like, I don't drink soda. I don't drink juice. It's fine. Baby steps, right? Right. That's probably not a step I'm going to take, but yeah. Hey, Jenny, thank you so much. This was absolutely, totally, completely, awesomely insightful. I can't wait for the book to come out. I'm going to recommend it to everybody who I know who struggles with gluten, and maybe come back and let us know how the book is doing.
I'd love to.
And I'll update you on how I'm doing with Instagram.
I know. I'd love to hear. I want an update for sure on the book and Instagram. Thank you so much, Mike.
Awesome. Thanks, Jenny.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.